What's up, YouTube? This is Plant-Based Booch, and I like eating plants. That's it. That's all I'm going to say is that I like eating plants. I'm a vegan dude, and that's how I handle it. I'm going to be telling you about my top MCU mental health moments. Now, mental health is a really important thing for me. I've been struggling with it my entire life. It's a generational thing. Both of my parents have suffered with mental illness. And, it turns out that, I hit the genetic lottery, and that's my inheritance as well. I kind of empathize with a lot of characters who have gone through trauma and who are struggling through their own issues. Even though they may be exceptional people, as we see in the MCU, we see that everyone still struggles. So here are 6 moments that I've cultivated that have resonated with me. WandaVision. WandaVision was awesome, much better than I expected it to be. I didn't watch any of the trailers. I really don't do that much nowadays. I like going into things as blind as possible, as unspoiled as possible. And WandaVision was such a pleasant surprise. It was a real character study into, what happens when you take somebody who has been through all of this trauma and you turn them into a weapon. She is a millennial superhero. She's the same age as I am, I believe. I think she was born in '89. She, like myself and a lot of others from our generation, I think, especially because as time goes on, we see more 2-parent households. If they're not splitting up, then they're both going out to work separate jobs. So a lot of us have had to either partially raise ourselves or resort to what we've seen in entertainment or TV. Or Wanda's character resonated with me in that, she kind of was able to escape the horrors of her world in entertainment, in TV, and she has this moment at the end where, she's been gaslit by Agatha, and, we see that Wanda has done this terrible thing because of her grief. Because that can happen too. Just because people are victims doesn't mean that they can't be victimizers themselves. So we see that Wanda is trying to correct what she's done. Agatha tells her that, hey, once a spell is cast, it can't be changed. It'll always be broken, just like you. And Wanda says, I don't need you to tell me who I am. And I thought that moment was very powerful. I think as millennials, we see that the situations that we're put in socially, politically, professionally, they're not super awesome. A lot of the systems have kind of let us down, and we're just doing our best to make life happen and to be productive adults in spite of that. So we have a lot of boomers telling us, oh, well, it's your fault, and here's why you're always failing, and here's why you can't afford a house, and if you just saved up some money, blah, blah, blah. And Wanda just very much embodies that idea of, hey, listen, you don't get to tell me anything. Don't tell me who I am. Don't tell me what my problems are, because you don't know where I'm coming from. We also have grief is just love persevering, which that was an incredibly powerful moment as well, especially because it comes from Vision, who is, for all intents and purposes, an artificial human. But I think we forget that Vision was born kind of as the next stage in evolution. Like he is a biological creature, even though he has vibranium, skeletal structure and circuitry and stuff like that. Like, he's still made very much according to what a human design is, just the next stage. And we see that he understands things about the human condition that humans don't, because he's able to come from it from a different perspective. One thing I'm going to talk about a few times is my mother. She passed away in 2019, and I had to work with that grief, and I still am working through it in my own ways. But the day after she passed, I actually looked up a scene from Age of Ultron, where Ultron and Vision are having their last little conversation, and Ultron tells him something to the effect of, it's very useless. Like, these people aren't going to live long. They're going to destroy themselves. And Vision tells Ultron that a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts. So here comes Vision again to help me with my grief. And he says that grief is just love persevering. And I think a lot of us feel guilty when we have negative feelings, but every feeling serves a purpose. There's no such thing as a negative feeling. It's what we do with those feelings that may be constructive or destructive. But the idea that every time I feel grief or every time I feel sadness or I'm missing somebody, my mom in this case, or anyone else, it's because I still love them. And that even though they're not here, my love is still so strong that it transcends that. And that's really beautiful to me. I guess this is more than 6 moments, but I think it's 6 different properties. Anyway, lastly from WandaVision, Vision v. Vision, the Vision fight. And when we have WandaVision versus the original bodied Vision, the White Vision as he's called. And the way that they settle their fight is a thought experiment. It's the ship of Theseus. And, we have this philosophical question of what is the real ship? Is it the actual rot? Is, once something is completely replaced, beam by beam, plank by plank, is it still the same? I think that applies to us as humans. Physically, we change a lot over time. Our cells turn over every so many years. So we're actually not the same person, but yet we feel like the same person. We have the same habits. We have, the similar thought processes. We have all the same memories. So the question is it the physical you that makes you who you are, or is it the memories? Is it the rot? And I kind of viewed the rot as maybe there are some bad memories or some hard-learned lessons in our histories, but that is also a part of what makes us who we are. We can get better. We can take those rotted planks away, but still have the memories that got us there. I don't know if that makes sense, but it resonated with me. Next, Avengers Endgame. Thor still being worthy. Thor went through a lot after Infinity War. Well, he went through a lot before that too. Despite Thor taking on this cheerful himbo persona, we see that it's kind of to cover up a lot of loss. That he's lost his father, his mother, not in that order, his people, his brother a couple of times, Heimdall. But we see that Thor has lost, and that he really hasn't had time in between movies to process this grief. So when he is finally processing it, when we come to him in Endgame, we see that he's gained a lot of weight. He's an alcoholic. I think he feels a lot of guilt over not being able to stop Thanos. And then when he finally did stop Thanos, it was too late. It was just revenge. It wasn't the right thing. It wasn't the hero-like thing to do, to just decapitate a defenseless man. Defenseless zealot, if you want to call him that, because the harm he had done had already been done. Thor knew that wasn't who he was supposed to be. And it's difficult, I think, when you're so capable in so many ways, that Thor is such a powerful and mighty character, that when he's not able to do something, or when a bad thing happens, it has to be his fault. He could have or should have prevented it. He holds himself to these impossible standards. And I find myself in a similar mindset very often. But there's this moment in which Thor visits his mom who has passed, and she knows it's an older version of him, and she tells him something to the effect of, everyone fails at being who they're supposed to be. All we can do is kind of be the best version of ourselves, like the best version of who we are. And that's fantastic, because a lot of the standards we have for ourselves aren't set by ourselves. They're set by others. They're set by outside forces. And we feel that if we don't meet those standards, that we're not worthy, we're not worthwhile, that we're not living up to our full potential. But sometimes just being the best version of who we are is a success in and of itself. And Thor has, this so much loss. He doesn't have Mjolnir anymore, but while he's there, he still reaches out. And once Mjolnir comes to him, it's this incredible relief and this incredible validation. He says, I'm still worthy. Like, even though you've fallen, even though you've done things that aren't hero-like, even though you've been depressed, it doesn't make you any less worthy. You still have a good heart. You're still a hero. That's beautiful. It's perfection. Moon Knight. Mark meeting Khonshu. Now, there are a lot of moments in Moon Knight that resonated with me as well. We find out that Mark has dissociative identity disorder, and he created an alter in order to escape childhood abuse. I don't think I've done that, but I definitely dissociate on a regular basis, or I have dissociated, kind of escaped into my own head in very uncomfortable or traumatic situations. And within the past couple of years, it's the first time I've really dealt with feelings of taking my own life. I'll put it that way. And it was really validating to see that Mark, who is this, for all intents and purposes, a very tough and powerful and capable character, that he was at such a low point that, when he finally became Moon Knight, he had a gun to his head. He had a gun right under his chin, and he was ready to end it. And Khonshu just says, what a waste. As in, what a waste. Like, you have all of this potential, and you're about to throw it away. And Khonshu literally asks Mark, he gives him a choice. He says, do you want death or do you want life? And when Mark is confused about answering it, Khonshu tells him, he says, your mind, I feel it. It's fractured, broken. And regardless of how manipulative Khonshu actually is in the context of that scene, for me, it was a very effective moment, because in a lot of ways, Khonshu could have been speaking to me at that time, confused about myself, not sure if I am the same version I used to be of myself, or if I'm going to be getting better, or if I'm only going to decline as time goes on. There's so many questions. The mind is broken. It's not quite where it was. And there was a straight up choice. And he said, do you want life or do you want death? And because he chose life, he was able to go on and do some good with whatever he had left in him. I think also that Mark and Steven learning how to work with each other was, a really good representation of self-love. But our next example is one of my favorite representations of self-love, Loki. Loki and Sylvie have a very interesting relationship, as in they are the same person, although Sylvie, the only thing that she did wrong was being born a her instead of a he. The female Loki wasn't supposed to exist. There's a whole LGBTQIA narrative there, which while I do identify as somebody on that spectrum, I haven't had to put up with the persecution, so I can't really speak to it in that way. The thing that really hit me was that Loki and Sylvie are at odds with each other, and there's this moment where they're at the end of the world. They're at the apocalypse together, and they kiss each other. And we've seen that Loki doesn't feel that he's worthy of love. He feels all this shame and all of this guilt for the things he's done, and everyone who's ever told him he's worthless, without being inside of his head or really knowing why he does what he does, he's taken all of that and internalized it, and he feels all of that guilt. He feels all of that shame. He knows that he's acting out. Every version of Loki we see in that show has tried to change, and every time they do, they get shut down for it. The TVA shows up and messes with them. That Lokis are destined to be weaselly little con men who hate themselves and everyone else. And yet, in spite of it, Loki and Sylvie kiss. And there's something really beautiful to me about just, it's the end of the world and all you have left is yourself. And finally, at this time, you're learning to accept who you are. I think that's beautiful. And at the very end, when they're throwing down in, at the end of time, or the one who remains, they're thrown down in his office or study. Sylvie, she's had such a rough life that she can't trust Loki. She can't trust herself. And Loki just says to her, he says, "All I want is for you to be okay." That moment for me is just, mwah. Just this idea of ourselves, of being at odds with ourselves and, trying to better who we are, or not feeling like we're worthwhile. And then finally just coming to terms and saying, listen, I just want you to be okay. That's, if we were able to tell ourselves that instead of telling ourselves the things we normally do, I think we'd be a lot more successful. The next moment is Guardians of the Galaxy. Star-Lord opening the gift that his mom left for him that he never was able to open. And this is a beautiful moment because Star-Lord is finally confronting something that he hadn't confronted at all. We see that at the beginning of the movie, he ran away from his mom on her deathbed when she wanted him to hold her hand. He didn't want to accept that his mother was passing. He didn't want to meet the reality of it. So we see that he stays kind of like 8 years old for the rest of his life, or however old he is at the time, and he's listening to the same music for the rest of his life, and he's stuck there. And I know what that's like. I very much escape into the things that I loved when I was younger in order to feel good about the now. And when he is able to finally accept his mother's passing, and see all of the rest of the music he was missing out on that now he can remember her by when he gets the Awesome Mix Volume 2. I think that's great. It ties for me with this moment in Wakanda Forever. I don't even know if it's at 6 moments anymore. But it ties for me with Wakanda Forever when Shuri is finally burning her funeral robes and thinking about her brother instead of just thinking about his absence. And grief has this amazing way of kind of, once you realize that it is love that you're feeling for this person you miss, instead of thinking about how sad you are for them being gone, you start feeling happy that you had those moments with them in the first place. Like, you can think back to all the ridiculous times you've had with somebody, or the silly things they've done or didn't intend to. And instead of just being like, oh, I'm never going to have those moments again, just being thankful that they happened in the first place. Just being able to think back on them and smile and be able to draw a happy memory. Because when that person was leaving, they were probably drawing on the same memory as you. And last, but certainly not least, is more of an honorable mention, but I count it as the MCU. Daredevil Season 3. Daredevil Season 3 was awesome for a lot of reasons. You had the great introduction of Bullseye. You had a couple of other things. Honestly, I watched it years ago. But one of the things that really stays with me is this final showdown between Daredevil and Kingpin. And Daredevil is just taking Kingpin to town. He is just beating him mercilessly. And Kingpin is like, do it. Kill me. And Matt is so close to ending it. And he has this. Now, this is actually while my mom was passing. And I was going through a lot, just to let you into my life, I was going through a lot with my father at the time. I was my mother's medical proxy. So I was able to make the decisions regarding her life, or regarding whether or not they were going to resuscitate her if things went wrong. And my father was very much at odds with me on the decisions that I was making. And it was very frustrating, because in times like that, you want family to come together and not to fight each other. because we both really needed that support because we were losing someone we loved. And I just remember being so indignant and being so angry and just, I was hurting myself. I was punching things and hurting my wrist. I was yelling uncontrollably, in private, not just going out into the public, like, but like to the point that my vocal cords were damaged, and I regularly make money with my voice. I do voiceover. And this isn't, in a lot of ways that's not who I am. That's not like me. And Daredevil, when he's fighting Kingpin, he's about to do it and he's about to kill him and he decides not to. He spares Kingpin, and it's not for Kingpin. That's the idea. He doesn't spare Wilson Fisk for Wilson Fisk's sake. He spares it to save himself. And Matt says, you don't get to decide, oh no, that's what Wanda says. Wanda says, you don't get to tell me who I am. Matt says, you don't get to change who I am. No matter how terrible you are, no matter what you do, that makes you a terrible person. But you don't get to change who I am or how I act or what my morals are. That's up to me. And that was really a great moment. I think that was handled very well. So, if you've enjoyed seeing me cry about the MCU, let me know what else you'd like to see me cry about. Comment down below and let me know what your favorite Marvel mental health moments were, or moments that got you through difficult times in your life. Let me know what else you'd like to see me commentate on, because I love reviewing movies, but also I like to kind of add a bit of a twist to them. Talk about what I got out of it. Subscribe for more. I'm Plant-Based Booch, and I don't have a sign off yet.